Welcome back to the File X channel. In the history of maritime navigation, there are ships that carry not only cargo and passengers, but also tales steeped in tragedy. SS Yongala is one such name, forever linked with catastrophe, mystery, and an extraordinary revival. Launched in 1903, SS Yongala was the pride of Australia's transport industry, ferrying passengers and goods across the vast seas and bustling ports of the continent. Yet, as if fate had scripted its destiny, the short life of this ship was far from peaceful. After 8 years of tireless voyages, disaster struck in 1911. The ill-fated journey began in the northeastern waters of Australia, near the Great Barrier Reef, the largest coral reef in the world, where the ocean seems like a dual-faced deity, breathtakingly beautiful yet dangerously fierce. Caught in an unexpected storm, SS Yongala was engulfed by the raging waves. All 122 passengers and crew on board perished, leaving no survivors. Since then, SS Yongala has been called the Titanic of the Great Barrier Reef. What's more peculiar is that for nearly half a century after the tragedy, the ship seemed to vanish entirely from all maps. No one knew where it had drifted to within the vast, unfathomable ocean. The shipwreck became one of Australia's greatest maritime mysteries, raising countless unanswered questions. Then, in 1958, the story took a dramatic turn. During a routine dive, a group of local divers accidentally discovered the shipwreck. Hidden by the ocean for nearly 50 years, SS Yongala resurfaced, enshrouded in coral and surrounded by a flourishing marine ecosystem. What followed was unexpected. SS Yongala, once a grim reminder of tragedy, transformed into one of the world's most renowned diving sites, attracting over 10,000 divers each year. Visitors come not only to marvel at the surreal beauty of the coral reef, but also to feel the haunting presence of a sorrowful past resting beneath the waves. The mystery of SS Yongala is not just the story of a ship, but also a chilling reminder. Nature, no matter how enchanting, wields an unpredictable and overwhelming power. And in the deep, uncharted waters of the ocean, many such enigmatic stories await discovery. Townsville, Queensland, Australia, October 22nd, 2003, 9 a.m. Like many other diving enthusiasts, Tina Watson, 26 years old, boarded a boat with her husband, Gabe Watson, 32 years old, to explore the SS Yongala shipwreck submerged beneath the ocean. After a few dozen minutes on the boat, the couple arrived at the designated location. They transferred to a larger diving vessel and received a quick briefing from the dive leader. Once everything was ready, Tina and Gabe, along with the other divers, suited up for the dive. Since Tina and Gabe had brought their own gear, the diving company only needed to provide oxygen tanks for the couple. Once fully equipped, Tina and Gabe, accompanied by 4 other divers, began their descent into the deep ocean. It was meant to be an awe-inspiring exploration, but just a few minutes into the dive, Gabe suddenly surfaced and returned to the boat. Gabe told everyone that there was an issue with his dive computer, a device that provides essential technical information such as sound, depth, and dive time under any conditions. A staff member removed the dive computer from Gabe's wrist and replaced the battery. Thankfully, the device, which initially appeared faulty, started working again. Without hesitation, as soon as the dive computer was operational, Gabe and Tina re-entered the water. However, just 2 minutes after the couple descended, Gabe surfaced alone, calling for help and claiming that Tina was in danger. Upon hearing Gabe's words, the dive leader immediately jumped into the water. At this point, he saw Tina sinking rapidly toward the ocean floor right before his eyes. In this life-threatening moment, the experienced dive leader kept his composure and used all his strength to swim toward Tina, who was sinking to a depth of 30 meters. In less than 30 seconds, the dive leader reached Tina, but she was already unconscious. He quickly brought Tina back to the boat, where staff members rushed to her side and began performing CPR. Meanwhile, Gabe, still appearing shocked and shaken, stood by trembling, his face filled with concern as he watched his wife. Rescue teams worked tirelessly to save Tina for 41 minutes, but tragically, their efforts were in vain. Tina was pronounced dead at 11:21 a.m. Initially, the incident was believed to be a diving accident. However, a few dozen minutes later, the dive leader discovered that the dive computer Tina had been wearing on her wrist at the time recorded her total dive time as only 7 minutes. This meant that after just 7 short minutes underwater, Tina had tragically lost her life. Gabe shed tears when questioned by his companions about what had happened, and he explained it was an unexpected accident. He stated that while they were diving, the current became stronger than anticipated, causing Tina to panic in the swift water. Tina signaled to Gabe that she wanted to return to the surface. According to Gabe, he immediately swam to her side to assist her, but she was too frightened. In her panic, she accidentally struck his dive mask with her hand, causing oxygen from the mask to bubble out and obscure his vision. A moment later, when the bubbles cleared, Gabe said he saw Tina sinking rapidly toward the ocean floor, and he quickly surfaced to seek help. After hearing Gabe's account, the dive leader asked, "Why didn't you try to rescue Tina yourself?" Strangely, in response to this question, Gabe gave an illogical answer, claiming that at the time, he had an issue with his arm that prevented him from diving deeper to rescue Tina. He also mentioned that he had never been trained in rescue techniques for bringing a victim back to the surface during a diving emergency. However, Gabe was an experienced diver with a rescue diver certification. Knowing this, the dive leader couldn't understand why Gabe had failed to attempt rescuing his wife, who was in mortal danger right before his eyes. The next day, the autopsy report revealed that Tina's cause of death was asphyxiation, and her body displayed symptoms of air embolism. However, investigators raised questions as to why Tina's lungs contained less water than typically found in drowning victims. Despite this anomaly, Tina's death was initially ruled as an accident. 5 days after the incident, Gabe returned to the United States with Tina's body and immediately arranged her funeral. Friends and family of both Gabe and Tina gathered at the service to console him over the tragic loss of his wife. What was strange, however, was Gabe's behavior at the funeral. He was seen smiling, acting as though he was pleased about her death. He even made jokes mocking Tina's death in conversations with her friends and family. Furthermore, right after the funeral ended, Gabe attempted to claim Tina's life insurance through the travel insurance policy he had purchased before their honeymoon. It was only when the insurance company declined the payout, citing the accident as a diving-related incident, that Gabe finally gave up. Tina's father, Tommy, grew furious over Gabe's behavior at the funeral and his immediate call to the insurance company to claim Tina's policy. He believed there was more to his daughter's death than met the eye and felt compelled to investigate further. Ultimately, Tommy traveled to Australia on his own to meet and speak with the people who had been on the boat with his daughter the day of the accident. The first person Tommy met was the dive leader. The dive leader noted that Gabe's facial expressions at the time were very strange and insisted that he did not appear to be mourning his wife. Tommy immediately requested that the Australian police reinvestigate his daughter's death. The police, who had already begun to suspect foul play, reopened the case and uncovered several suspicious details. First, when police interviewed the divers who had been on the same boat with Tina and Gabe that day, one of the divers revealed that a video recording of the dive had accidentally captured footage of Gabe and Tina. In the video, they could be seen holding each other underwater. The diver who witnessed this stated that Gabe seemed to be restraining Tina, preventing her from moving. Coincidentally, a photograph taken underwater by another diver, Gary Stempler, became one of the case's pivotal pieces of evidence. The photograph showed Gabe swimming toward the surface while leaving Tina sinking to the ocean floor. This became a critical piece of evidence in the case. Combined with the autopsy findings, which revealed only a small amount of water in Tina's lungs, a theory emerged that Gabe may have intentionally turned off Tina's air supply while no one was paying attention. Gabe's action of holding his wife was speculated to be a way of restraining her until she lost consciousness, at which point he may have reopened her air supply, allowing her to sink before he swam to the surface to feign seeking help. Second, the fact that Tina skipped the trial dive session before exploring a dangerous area like the reef was deemed a reckless decision. This was quickly investigated, and it was discovered that the reason for this was Gabe. He had not allowed Tina to participate in the training dive, claiming that he would personally guide her. Third, another suspicious detail was uncovered by police. Normally, due to natural buoyancy, divers tend to float toward the surface, which is why divers must wear weights to help them stay underwater effectively. However, it was highly unusual that Tina was wearing much heavier weights than necessary at the time of the incident. While Tina's body typically required an additional weight of about 3 kilograms, she had been wearing 9 kilograms of diving weights on that day, and it was Gabe who had put them on her. When the dive leader learned of this, he asked Gabe about the extra weights Tina had been wearing during the incident. Gabe calmly explained that he had increased the weight to help his wife dive more easily, and claimed he had no other intentions. The dive leader reported all of Gabe's suspicious behavior before and after the incident to the police. One day in July 2004, Australian police reclassified the case as a criminal investigation, naming Gabe as a suspect and issuing a summons for him to return from the United States to Australia for questioning. However, Gabe refused to comply with the Australian authorities' summons and, through his lawyers, responded to the court's inquiries via written submissions. Despite this, Australian authorities confirmed that Gabe's written accounts of the incident differed from the data recorded by the dive computer he had been wearing on his wrist. Australian officials believed that Gabe had falsified his statements to conceal the fact that he caused his wife's death by turning off her air supply underwater and immobilizing her with a single embrace. While Australian police strongly suspected Gabe of being the perpetrator, they were initially puzzled as to why a man, married for only 11 days, would murder his wife. That was until police uncovered Gabe's motive through a statement from Tina's father, Tommy. Tommy revealed that before the incident, Gabe had persuaded Tina to increase the value of her life insurance policy and change the beneficiary to him. Based on Tommy's statement, police believed that Gabe killed his wife for financial gain. Australian authorities immediately charged Gabe with murder and attempted to summon him to Australia again. But Gabe declared that he would never set foot in the country. Then, in May 2009, 6 years after the incident, Gabe succumbed to the mounting pressure from Australian authorities and traveled to Australia for questioning. The truth about the tragic death of newlywed Tina on that fateful day was finally revealed to the world. Tina Thomas was actually born in West Germany in 1977. In 1980, at just 3 years old, she was adopted by Tommy and Cindy from Alabama, USA, who brought her home to live with them. Although she found herself in a new environment, Tina faced no difficulties adjusting. With the boundless love of her new family, Tina enjoyed a happy childhood, much like many other wonderful children. However, one unfortunate fact was that from a young age, Tina was diagnosed with paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, also known as PSVT. Due to this condition, Tina lived with the constant risk of experiencing rapid heartbeats, dizziness, fatigue, and shortness of breath. By the age of 24, Tina had undergone numerous major and minor surgeries to address her illness. Yet, her symptoms persisted stubbornly. Despite her fragile health compared to her peers and family, Tina worked hard to maintain a positive outlook. She learned how to take care of herself, as well as lovingly tending to the adorable puppies in her home. Academically, Tina also persevered, managing to gain early admission to the University of Alabama, the leading public university in the state, located in the heart of the southeastern United States. With its slogan, "Where legends are made," the University of Alabama has been home to many successful individuals in a variety of fields. Tina's life felt even more complete when she fell deeply in love with a fellow student from another state university. Their relationship blossomed to the point where the two became engaged after some time of dating. The ring Tina often wore on her hand was proof of the sweet bond they shared. However, one day, Tina met Gabe Watson, who was pursuing graduate studies at her university. At the time, despite knowing that Tina was engaged, Gabe persistently asked her out on dates. Even after Tina repeatedly declined his advances and told him she was already engaged, Gabe refused to give up. Meanwhile, Tina remained steadfast in her original decision. It seemed as though there was no hope for anything to develop between Tina and Gabe. However, after some time, due to opposition from Tina's parents, she and her fiancé were forced to call off their engagement. Gabe, of course, seized this opportunity and immediately resumed his pursuit of Tina, repeatedly asking her out. Eventually, after a period of time, Tina agreed, moved by Gabe's persistence and sincerity. Over time, Tina's feelings completely changed, and she fell deeply in love with Gabe. She couldn't stop gushing to her father about Gabe, the young man she had met at university, and told him that she wanted to marry him. Initially, Tina's father objected to her relationship with Gabe, as her parents didn't particularly like him. However, they also understood that they had already interfered in Tina's love life once before, and they didn't want to hurt their daughter again. For that reason, they ultimately approved of her marriage to Gabe. Overjoyed, Tina and Gabe began dreaming of a happy future together as they prepared for their wedding. At that time, for a couple, the honeymoon was just as important as the wedding itself. Therefore, before the wedding, Tina and Gabe had already discussed their idea of a perfect honeymoon. Their destination was Australia, and Tina was particularly excited about scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef, the world's largest coral reef. As soon as Tina's parents heard about their daughter's honeymoon plans, they became worried. They didn't want their daughter, born with a weak heart, to dive into the ocean so dangerously. When Gabe learned about their concerns, he approached Tina's parents and reassured them, boasting about his impressive diving experience and guaranteeing Tina's safety when she was with him. To ease their worries, Gabe arranged for Tina to take scuba diving lessons and get her certification before their honeymoon. Even so, before the trip, Gabe had completed 55 dives, while Tina had only completed 5. on September 26, 2003, 18 days before the wedding. Gabe suddenly began to reveal his true self when he quietly suggested to Tina that she increase the coverage on her life insurance policy and name him as the sole beneficiary. Tina found this strange but didn't question her husband-to-be and dismissed it without much thought. However, she still mentioned it to her father. Unsurprisingly, Tommy immediately sensed something was off and advised his daughter to reconsider the decision after their honeymoon. On October 11, 2003, Tina and Gabe finally tied the knot amidst the blessings of family and friends. The wedding footage and photos captured Tina's radiant smile of happiness. Little did she know that in less than 2 weeks, her life would turn into a tragedy, without a tomorrow. As planned, after the wedding, the newlyweds would travel to Australia, spending the first week in Sydney. In the second week, they planned to travel to Queensland for scuba diving. But everything took a devastating turn when Tina unexpectedly passed away just 7 minutes after beginning a dive, turning their dream honeymoon into a nightmare. At the time, Australian police identified Gabe as the primary suspect, charging him with murder and attempting to bring him back to Australia. Gabe ignored the summons from the Australian government. Meanwhile, in the United States, he exhibited extremely suspicious behavior. One day, the flowers and gifts placed on Tina's grave began to either be vandalized or disappear. After receiving reports from Tina's parents, the police reviewed surveillance footage around the grave. Shockingly, Gabe was caught on camera, routinely appearing at Tina's grave, destroying the flowers and gifts left there, and throwing them into the trash. When investigated, Gabe claimed he was merely cleaning up to maintain the neat appearance of his wife's grave. No matter how he tried to justify his actions, the court immediately issued a restraining order, preventing Gabe from approaching Tina's grave. What was even more astonishing was that, while the trial was still ongoing, in 2006, 3 years after Tina's death, Gabe publicly began dating another woman named Kimberly Lewis. By August 2008, he had even decided to marry Kimberly Lewis. On May 13, 2009, Gabe was summoned once again to Australia under mounting pressure from the Australian government. Initially, Gabe planned to continue resisting the summons. However, when the Australian authorities suddenly proposed downgrading the charge from murder to manslaughter, he decided to comply and travel to Australia to face trial. When Gabe arrived in Australia, the trial began. During the proceedings, Gabe maintained his innocence, only admitting guilt to failing to save his wife. On June 5, 2009, Gabe was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months in prison for deliberately failing to save his wife, despite being fully capable of doing so. However, Gabe appealed the verdict, claiming it was unreasonable. His argument was ultimately accepted, and the sentence was reduced to just 18 months. Tina's family was outraged by the court's decision and began considering how to seek justice against Gabe. At this time, their lawyer advised Tina's parents that if Gabe were released from Australia, they could sue him in the United States, where he could face harsher punishment. Following their lawyer's advice, Tina's parents filed a lawsuit accusing Gabe of murder, alleging that he had planned to kill his wife while they were still in the United States before traveling to Australia for their honeymoon. Prosecutors in the United States agreed with Tina's parents and subsequently requested that the Australian government extradite Gabe back to the United States. The Australian government responded that Gabe would be returned to the United States only if the U.S. promised to comply with extradition laws, meaning the death penalty would be ruled out for any crime Gabe was charged with upon his return. The state of Alabama in the United States agreed to this condition and promised to comply with the law. On November 1, 2010, Gabe was released from an Australian prison after serving his 18-month sentence. Before allowing the United States to extradite Gabe, the Australian government once again required assurances that he would not face the death penalty. On November 25, 2010, the Australian government's condition was finally accepted, and Gabe was extradited to the United States. Upon his return, Gabe was immediately arrested at the airport and brought to trial for murder. Prosecutors argued that Gabe had deliberately persuaded his wife, Tina, who suffered from a heart condition, to take up scuba diving, which led to her death, intending to claim the insurance payout after her demise. To support their case, prosecutors used methods such as reconstructing the dive scenario, presenting descriptions of crimes, listing alleged actions such as attaching an unusually heavy weight belt to Tina, preventing her from attending the orientation dive, deliberately failing to rescue her, and attempting to change her insurance beneficiary before the honeymoon. However, the court ruled that attaching a heavier-than-usual weight belt to Tina and preventing her from attending the orientation dive could not be used as evidence to prove Gabe committed murder. The court also reminded prosecutors that Gabe's failure to save Tina when she was in danger had already been punished in Australia. The court further ruled that evidence of Gabe's attempt to change the beneficiary of Tina's insurance policy to himself was inadmissible, as the beneficiary designation had not been altered by the time of the honeymoon. Ultimately, the court acquitted Gabe of all charges. Today, Gabe lives in the United States with his wife, Kimberly Lewis, who bears an uncanny resemblance to Tina and had known Gabe since high school. No one knows whether Gabe and Kimberly had reconnected while Tina was still alive, or if they had come together by chance after Tina's death. If Gabe had secretly been seeing Kimberly while planning his wedding with Tina, it could provide another motive behind Tina's death. But regardless of what is said, one undeniable fact remains. Gabe was ultimately declared innocent and is now free. Meanwhile, Tina's parents, who had raised and cherished their daughter, continue to endure difficult days filled with anger and frustration over the verdict and overwhelming despair over the loss of their beloved daughter.